Dr. D's been working with our Student Association for a long time. She's historically been presenting at AMICCUS and CSA since 2009. So please join me in welcoming Dr. D.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. My origin story began in Chatham, Ontario. I was born in Chatham, Ontario. And my destination and my destiny, I had no idea that I was going to be a professor. I only ever wanted to be a psychologist. And I was a school psychologist full-time for 5 years, and I went on for another 13 years in private practice. And like most of us, what's meant for us finds us. And so I had no idea, even though my Ph.D. research at Western in London was on teacher enthusiasm, that I was meant to teach. And I moved to Windsor, I should say, in 2002. And I started working at the Catholic board there. That was my 5th year working as a school psychologist. And it was a 1-year contract to support kids with special needs. Doing psych assessments, mostly psych assessments. That's mostly what psychologists do. And my life took a pivot because it was actually only a 1-year contract and the funding had run out. And I opened the newspaper back then, it was 2002, and there was a posting for a sessional professor at St. Clair College, and they needed somebody who could teach in the collaborative nursing program because it was the first year that they had to have a degree program in all of the colleges across Ontario for nursing, and they needed someone with a PhD. And it just so happened that I was enjoying my summer off as a school psychologist, and I missed the interview. But the person, Tina DeSimone, who's now the vice president at Seneca College, Tina DeSimone, was doing her PhD back then, and she was so intent on finding me. So I called her after I got back from up north in Michigan playing golf with my then boyfriend, current husband, final husband, who actually stapled all the handouts that you have right now because I have high-end administrative support. He will be integrated through the whole talk for sure. So I called, and it's one of those things that we worry so much about parts of our lives that aren't going to stick. And a big part of resiliency that I'll talk to you about is the fact that when you're meant to be doing what you're meant to be doing, the path clears itself. And so I called up, and HR said, no, we need you in for an interview. So I came in for an interview the next day, and I talked about 5 different ways that you could teach students using multi-sensory teaching, using my background as a psychologist. What is good about pressure? What are some of the benefits of pressure? So as we're doing this, think about all the 7 traits on there, and which of the 2 do you relate to the most? So if you look to the slides, 7 traits of resilient leaders, which do you relate to the most? Point being that pressure is good when you're filled up mentally, when you're filled up emotionally, when you're filled up with a good night's rest, when you feel safe to fail. What did I get on my first statistics actual exam? What did I get on my first stats exam? Does anybody want to guess? Pardon?
That sucks. 32. You said 38.
Yep.
Nailed it.
Yeah, I love how you think. It was 38. And I remember going for the world's longest bike ride after that in London. And the point was is that you can fail. It was 38. And then I went on, and I had to have the courage to talk to my stats professor. And trust me, back then, they were really, 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 really scary. And then I went on to pass, because the lesson in that is that I didn't understand I had to reach out for help. So then I started writing Thriving Under Pressure, and that's my psychology blog, and I have about 250 posts on there now. And I started filming psychology videos, so almost every lecture I have, I'll do like a 3-minute summary, so that's another way to entice them to class. And so I have a psychology YouTube channel, and my point being that I'm always learning, and I'm always failing. And that the reason that we need to put pressure on students is they will leave school, perhaps with a skill, but not life skills. And the world is not getting easier, the world's getting harder. And I've never in my life believed in students more than I believe in them today. Because we have really dropped the veil. We have really dropped the veil between us and them. And I always talk about in the nursing program, I'm teaching about compassionate healthcare right now, and compassionate learning and listening, and how we have to be on the same level as them. I sit in a chair at the back of the room. I have 100 students in the class. I'm there with them. So the more, if anything, like today, be permission or encouragement for that co-creative aspect of leadership. That we are always under pressure. We're under more pressure than ever ourselves for different reasons. So that's why part of being a resilient leader is taking the pressure off in areas of your life that don't matter. We sold like our fancy cars. We now have basic cars so that my husband can retire early. We've recalculated everything so that we can spend more time traveling and having less stuff. We're just reevaluating our life in terms of what is beautiful post-pandemic, not just at work, but in life. What matters? Where do you want to put your pressure? And have that conversation with students. One of my absolute favorite TEDx talks is called Make Stress Your Friend. It's by a health psychologist named Dr. Kelly McDonegal. And essentially, we always hear that stress kills people. It's not stress, it's your perception of stress. So I, with my students, started rebranding stress back in 2016. So that when they don't meet the standards, I always show them, I teach with tough love. I'm a kickboxer. But I have a big heart. But if I'm all love, then there's no standards, there's no expectations. And if I'm all kickboxing, then I'd probably clear the room pretty quickly. Right? So think about all of those things in terms of pressure, why it's good. So what I've included here at the end is one of the articles I wrote, called Thriving Under Pressure in Entrepreneurship. So it's included in your package because small businesses have never been under more pressure. And we hear about support local all the time, and I just am, and they are my leaders, all of the entrepreneurs in our town, and they've had to pivot. So this is a benefit of pressure. This is a benefit of the pandemic. We've all had personal pandemics. We've all had personal pandemics that whether you've lost jobs, whether you're in a health crisis, whether you've gone through bankruptcy, whatever it is, and a personal pandemic has so much shape. A global pandemic, we have the opportunity to learn with each other without the shame. So a pandemic is global and our experience with it's personal. So when we talk about the next part about resiliency, is that it's really important that all of us individually take responsibility for our mental health and our physical health. So I'd like you to write on your sheet of paper too, what have you done for yourself lately? What have you done for yourself lately? We have this world that's so focused, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's so focused on the top of the pyramid. And how this works is that we have to take care of our deficiency, including food, deficiency needs first, and we will stay at the bottom of the hierarchy until those deficiency needs are met. I do a lecture on sleep. And I talk to nursing students about their own patients and how resistant, including everybody in this room, they are to change. It's easy to see what needs to be changed. It's harder to be the change. And we think about being the change, we think huge, and really it starts with one step at a time. And so napping is a big reason that they don't sleep well at night. And another one is that they're going to cramp. So I teach them the value of sleep from the perspective, something I do a lot of work in is time and energy management. And if you're filled up, you can do 3 times as much in half the time. And so their homework, and they have to dedicate it for a whole week without taking a nap. They have to put their phone turned off 2 floors away from them. They have to ask whoever they're living with to change the password on Netflix, to commit to hardcore sleep hygiene. And it's unbelievable, all of us in the room, the difference that it makes when we get a good night's sleep. It's actually the only time that our neurons make new connections, and while we sleep, our brain empties itself of all of the essentially neural waste. And so one of the ways that I ease into a conversation about sleep, because nobody likes being told what to do, I do dream analysis with them. So they bring in their dreams, we talk about their dreams, and then once again, I say to them, I'm not gonna take away the 3 hours that you're napping, because I was your age once, and I used to nap, because it's the most amazing escape possible. But I encourage them to not nap for more than 20 minutes, and take that 2 hours and 20 minutes and go walk around Indigo. Go read a book, whatever it is. What's really important for all of us in this room is that we think change has to be punishing. That we think physical health has to be punishing. And that's why I love both your answers around physical health and nutrition, is that that's an active type of self-love. We see Instagram all the time with all statements, but how are you showing yourself that you care about yourself? And that what I know for sure is that simple things on repeat are what is sustainable. Simple things, and this is why routines are so important, that it really, you want to, like when you think about flow, when you think about pressure, when you think about simple things on repeat, you want to turn your brain off and be automatic about certain things, and just making your lunch, for example, like if you're going to work out, have your stuff at the door. All these little things can make a difference. Another thing is, one of the reasons that we're not taking care of our health is because there are a lot of people, and this is legitimate, have post-traumatic stress disorder, whether it be from the pandemic, maybe it's something that happened to you in your 20s, whatever it is, so that no matter where you are, that you don't feel safe. So one of the ways that I characterize feeling safe, so this is the next one up, is imagine 5 parts of your life. Of those 5 parts of your life, for sure, 3 areas of your life are worry-free zones. So whether it's work is your safe place. It could be with your pet, that's your safe place. It could be with your nieces, that's your safe place. And that's why we're going to move into putting a time limit on negativity. Because what happens, of course I wrote an article on that one too. What happens is that as a compassionate, caring person, and 4 kids, actually 10 now, but four kids, and my mom was very busy, going to school, working, etc. And so every time she was with each of us, she'd set the egg timer on the stove. And we'd each get 10 minutes to tell us what the challenges were. And the reason for that is that time, this is one thing, the pandemic, any of you that have been around people with any kind of diagnosis, anybody who's lost anybody lately, time really is our most valuable asset. So that you, A, respect yourself enough that you don't want to be the dumping ground for other people, and B, you love the person enough that you want to have time for joy, dance parties. I lost somebody suddenly, which is why I value your story so much, of a heart attack about November, this time last year. And she was young, and she was a head of guidance for Blenheim District High School. She was my stepmom of 31 years. She was very actively involved in Chatham's, all of Chatham's, Chatham County Health Alliance, all of that. And my point being, thank God, the last time I saw her, which was Thanksgiving last year, it was filled with joy. It was filled with conversation. It was an Oreo. I just remember getting that big turkey into the stove, so that I like to go dark to go light. So that imagine every single day, all of us, because nobody's promised tomorrow, if anything, we know that now, is our last day on earth and also our first. So that when we put a time limit on negativity, we have more energy, we have more time. So yeah, complain, listen, I'm really good at it. But my husband walks out of the room and my mom just shuts the door. Like we were kids, I love attention so much that I knew that I'd only get my parents' attention when I had good stuff to tell them. Because you know why they would walk out of the room? Because they believed in me. They believed in me. They knew I could solve my own problems. So I'm going to see some of your answers to give this one away. So have permission to put a time limit on negativity for that one person. When they call, you don't take the call because you know it's going to be negative. The way that you sustain relationships, me too, and keep them honest is you don't just take it and then take it and then take it and then ghost that person. You be honest enough. Honest really speeds things up and say, you know what, I think you are fantastic. Right, where is it? Right here. Who put commitment and passion for change? Okay? Joel and I know each other. We go way back. So Joel has a commitment and passion for change, and that's what he's seeing post-pandemic, clearing the path. And when he sits down with students, his leaders, with staff, with his family, if it's all what's wrong, then they can't commit to the passion that's in their life. And then, who put work-life balance? Work-life balance? Okay? So who wants to claim it? Right here. And another part is that resilient leaders know their strengths, but they also know their limits. So anybody at your table right now, I want you to turn to the person beside you, and I want you to tell that person what you admire most about them. Yes, what you admire most to the person to your right, most about them in leadership, okay? So have a conversation right now. And if I haven't said it already, I want to say to each and every one of you how much I appreciate what you do. Because I know that our students are our future. They really are. And so part of this, about knowing our strengths and our limits, is that when you're young especially, it's not easy to hear what's wrong. So part of emotional intelligence, this is knowing your strengths and your limits, that you can start, because you have teams and they change every year, right? And you want to get the most out of them because it takes a lot to train them. So when we start in terms of knowing their strengths and their limits, what you do with the leaders, and by the way, they lead us, we lead them, and it's called leadership, is that what's an easy way to step into the hard conversations? So one of the ways to do it is by, what are the strengths? What do you find most interesting about that person? So that it's curious to know what their self-awareness is, what the social awareness is, and what we know right now is that there's a lot of issue around self-regulation. So part of self-regulation is that the students aren't very focused, and that could be one of the limits that you're noticing, that they don't get things done because they're not focused on the task at hand. They maybe aren't accountable. Every year I work with SRC in Windsor, and with Shabam, 2 years ago, he wanted to talk about accountability. How can he make the team more accountable? And so we went back to the basics. And one of the basics, and I'll say this to everybody right here, right now, that all of you have it in such a solid way, it's full-on presence. Being fully with the person in front of you, and if that will help with every aspect of emotional intelligence. And it's really encapsulated everything that we've been talking about. When I asked you about what is it post-pandemic that is opening up, what makes it different, is that you have an opportunity to re-educate, that you have an opportunity to change. The research is called stress hardiness. And it's based, they call it hardy personalities do better in stress. That's where I got the concept of thriving under pressure about. Being from Kent County, who's from Kent County? Anybody? I guess I'm the origin story. I grew up corn and tasseling. We had a choice. We could corn and tassel, or we could stay home and garden for free. Okay, so I corn and tasseled at a very young age. And corn and tasseling is the reason I went on to get my Ph.D. because I thought if I didn't do well in school, I'd have to corn and tassel for the rest of my life. That's my hard thing, but it's not a bad thing at all. And so the idea of hardiness is that there was a strain of corn they were trying to develop that would allow basically to feed the world no matter what the conditions were. And this strain of corn did better in hurricanes and drought, you name it. And so hardiness is, once again, that challenges are an opportunity to change. Challenges are an opportunity to grow. Challenges are a step up. Is that if my students, for example, if there's a test, you know you have these meetings all the time, you have expectations of your students. If everybody fails a question, I'm wrong. If one person fails or a question, they're wrong. So part of the growth mindset is that, and this is our flexing and growing, and this is why palm trees need hurricanes to grow, because palm trees, when they flex, the roots grow stronger, and that's why a big part of resiliency is our ability to, and this is up here right now, this is it, adapt and change. Whereas oak trees, when there's a hurricane, they break in half because they're stiff, they're not open, any of those things. So that all of us, every day, have to commit to being of the beginner's mindset. That no matter what the information is, that it's data. So whatever expectations we have of our students, we need to put the expectations on ourselves too. And that's what really keeps it like I'm starting my 21st year teaching at St. Clair in the nursing program, and it feels like day one. Because I always say to them, I don't teach psychology, I teach students. And they're always teaching me, trust me. And I'm also a walking psychology experiment, that's for sure too. So if you're in my sphere, watch out. And then lean in and listen, and be willing to be changed by what we hear. And that's where the softness of resilience comes in. That's where the kindness, the compassion, and this is where it's important, and I'm talking to myself, and if we had more time, we'd have more input, that when things don't go well, like if things are different, how can we lean into our students and get feedback? So this, and what I shared, is a great way for all of us to encourage our students and student leaders to speak up, to work on, back to what I was talking about earlier, full-on presence. One of the ways you can tell whether, let's start with us, always start with us, that we're not paying attention, that we're not listening, like fully listening, is that when somebody stops talking, there's that overlap. And so that when someone is talking and this is where talking stops. You may be using a beer bottle or wine bottle with a friend. But a talking stick definitely helps in having one conversation going on, not 6 different conversations. And it's very calming and it's very emotionally regulating to bring everybody into that conversation, because it's the one thing we're all missing is the human contact. So when I asked you, what are some of the best things that are happening post-pandemic? That you see the promise, you can reconnect with your colleagues and with students, that your impact, that things that we did pre-pandemic that we take for granted. When I go to school, and I have all 8 a.m. classes, when I go to school, I make a point of noticing the trees, noticing the campus. St. Clair was one of the first to go back in person last year. Sometimes it took 90 minutes just to get in the front door. So whenever someone's, and I'm sure you do all these things like a quick shift, when people are having a bad day, I always say, time travel back 12 months. Time travel back, it's a new reference point. So that listen to learn, and then finally, when you think about resilient leaders, what can make the difference is there will always be challenge, there'll always be struggle, there'll always be bills, there'll always be stress, there'll always be lack of sleep, there'll always be a million things that are wrong. North Star vision goes back to the idea of what your original why is. So that when I am struggling, because I'm human like everybody else, I always remember that every time I teach a nursing student, I have the opportunity to touch potentially 1,000 patients that they'll work with. That I have the opportunity, that I'm doing it now, teaching their kids that are now in nursing. I have an opportunity to to make a change that is bigger than I am. And that is similar, that's one thing that we all share. We share the future, not just of Canada, not just of the world, but we can talk aliens if you want to. That we have an opportunity to make a change. So if I were to ask everybody to do this one last exercise, what would you say is your North Star? For me, as I shared, no matter what, if I focus on why I'm there, which is the student, then everything else feels like noise. So what, and it could be anything, what would you say is your North Star? What is your why? You know, if you go back to why, you know, why you do what you do, what is the one thing? It could be for your kids, because your work doesn't have to be about your work. It could be because you particularly like one aspect of your job. Okay, this is exactly the time, and I wanted to say that I believe enough in you that you will pick one of the 7 traits of resiliency leaders to bring it back to your home, to bring it back to your Tim Hortons, to bring it back to the community, because it's going to be good. It's going to be great. It's going to be different, and I'm very fortunate to know that Ontario is in good hands and because of you. So thank you for having me, and thank you for your time.